Good day, everyone. Good morning, good evening, wherever you are out there in the world. Do you know that emotional triggers are something that we've all experienced, right? But often at the time that you're experiencing it, it doesn't feel really great. So today, on today's episode of the Coffee with Rhonda Show, we are going to discuss those emotional triggers, where they come from, and what you can do about it. Let's get ready to learn to lead above the grind. All right. So, hello, everyone. We are back. We are ready for another fantastic episode. We're going to get our conversation started. So, thank you so much for tuning in to the Coffee with Rhonda show. This is your inspiration, revelation, and wit for today's savvy leader. So, we are here with episode 60. Gosh, I can't even believe it's episode 60. And on today's coffee table, yes, Roz, yes. So today on our coffee table discussion, we are going to talk about triggered, right? Those emotional triggers, what they are, why they happen, and what we can do about it. So before we introduce our guests and our amazing caffeinated co-host, just a few housekeeping items. If you're tuning in, wherever you're tuning in from, like the video, share the video. And if you happen to be watching on YouTube, don't forget to subscribe. Also, don't forget to comment during the show. We bring your comments into our discussion. They power us. They really infuse and engage us in our conversation. So we want to hear from you as well. If you're watching, don't forget to tell us what's in your cup and where you're watching from. So we're excited to be here. My name is Rhonda Y. Williams, and I'm your host for the show. I am what I call our soul, and that is a recovering stressed out leader. So what I do today is I help leaders really decide that it is time to be more empowered and to feel more well-being by learning to lead above the grind. And so today I have my little I lead above the grind cup. I lead above the grind cup. Just in case you didn't know, I lead above the grind, right? This is a choice. So in my cup today, I have mocha cinnamon with my almond creamer. So that's me, and that's what's in my cup today. So let's introduce our co-host, and then we will introduce our wonderful guest for today. So let's start with you, Ms. Roz Jones. Good day, good morning to you.
Good morning, and I'm home 2 weeks in a row, honey. I'm happy. That's a good trigger. Yeah, to be at home. I'm Roz Jones, the CEO and owner of Jacksonville's Best Caregivers. In case you don't know, I don't know why you don't know. But anyway, I'm here to help expand the life of your loved one through caregiving services. And why do I do it? I do it to help the caregiver reduce that SOS on their journey, which is being stressed, overwhelmed, and providing safety and security. When you can't do it all, give us a call, honey. And I have my cup, not much is in
it. I lead above the grind.
Yes, I do have a liquid in there, but I care not to discuss what it is.
Roz, it's just us. Your secret is safe with us, and only everybody out
50
there.
50 billion people on Facebook. I don't think so.
All right, Ms. Roz, thank you. Good day. Good evening to you, Mireille.
Good morning to you all. How are you? This is Mireille, tuning in from Perth, Australia, so down under. I'm the greatness engineer. I think you know it by now. And I make sure people understand that they are unlimited and they step into their greatness. And I particularly focus on women in male-dominated environment. And today I'm drinking some lemongrass, so really good.
Lemongrass, fantastic. Yum. Mireille, you've got, does your jacket say Australia?
Yeah, today I'm very patriotic. So I said, okay, let me put it. I don't have my t-shirt, but I'm going to put Australia. So next time, hopefully, I get my coffee with Rhonda t-shirt.
Awesome. Yeah, there's one. We're planning a show, everybody, where we're all going to wear our t-shirts. So that's going to be coming up soon. Awesome. Thanks so much, Mireille. And so welcome. So I met this amazing lady on club in the halls of Clubhouse. I'm meeting a lot of really amazing, great people in the halls of Clubhouse, and we participated in the first annual Global Emotional Intelligence Summit together, and so we connected then. And so I thought I had to have her on the show. So welcome to the Coffee with Rhonda show, Miss Wanda. Welcome. Tell us a little bit about you, and then tell us what you have in your cup.
Well, hello, everyone. I am the CEO of We LLC Consulting Solutions. I do all things learning strategy, learning and development. Specialty areas are around emotional intelligence, and I call myself an empowerment coach. I love to empower women CEOs, business owners, executives, and leaders so they can be their authentic self. So just bringing us back to the wholeness of the matter that kind of gets lost in those spaces, right?
Yes.
Yeah. So thank you for having me here. I love the energy in this show. I love the ladies, the power ladies. So I have more of the cup for the coffee, but I do have coffee. She believed she could, so she did. So I'm having coffee this morning.
Oh, nice. I like the cup. Very cool. Awesome. Well, thank you. Thank you for being here. We're so excited. And I want to recognize and say good morning to Victoria. Victoria, hi out there tuning in from LinkedIn. Good morning to you. Victoria, you have to tell us what's in your cup. And then she sent a little smiley face also. Mom's also watching. Good morning, Mom. Yes, I'm ready for another great one. I have mango twist in my cup. Mom has the most interesting things in her cup every show. That sounds delicious. So thanks for tuning in. And we're going to go ahead and get our conversation started. So today we're going to be discussing emotional triggers. And as I, dived into this topic a little bit more, of course, the first thing I found myself thinking about is what in the world is an emotional trigger? Why do we have them, right? So we want to dive into that a little bit more. But I want to start with this quote. And I found this quote and thought that it really spoke to where we are today. So let me put that up for us. So people who trigger us to feel negative emotion are right? They are messengers. And there's something that we have not healed yet within us that they are just bringing to the surface. So I really love the thought of that. It caused me to think a little bit about, whenever I allow myself, and I'm going to use that term very consciously, whenever I allow myself to get triggered, what's the message in it for me? So that's going to be something that we dive a little bit more into. So Victoria responded. She said, "Hey everyone, I have Starbucks French roast, and so good to be here." And yes, absolutely, Victoria. Thank you so much, Starbucks French roast. I love that. So as we talk about triggers, let's talk about an emotional trigger. So when I say, are you emotionally triggered? What comes forward for all of you? How do you define an emotional trigger? And Mireille, let me start with you. How do you define an emotional trigger?
Oh my goodness, I don't know. I think, for me, the trigger, my children know when I'm triggered. I'm starting, and it's funny because when I'm triggered, I'm starting to speak because I speak several languages, but when I'm triggered, I speak French. So they know that mom is triggered. We don't have to stay, or we have to run away. So that's
I hear triggers. When mommy starts speaking French, that
And
means
screaming, that means there's a trigger coming behind that. So you better be running or changing rooms.
I love that. I love that. That seems simple enough, but I love because it's easy for everyone to pick up on. Okay, go this way. Okay. So that's
Exactly.
fantastic.
So I think for me, trigger is when you are in a state of I think it's fear in a way, because you are in a situation where you don't really know how to react. So it's really the first emotion coming out, and without really calculating anything. So it's just coming out, and then you say what you have to say, and by the time you realize, you regret what you just said. So it's I think that's when those trigger that's how those trigger are working. You don't have any control on them, but you can actually sense, when they're coming, and that's something that people can learn, I think. That they can feel like, okay, I'm going now in a zone where I'm going to be triggered, or I'm going to get out of control. So I will, take action in a way, or go out not to get the trigger to start, or, do something else, or just stay silent, or, any strategy that we can think about. So, and that's important to listen to ourselves, listen to our body, listen, and really looking internally how we feel when we communicate with people, and when we are in a certain situation, when we are not at ease, when we are a bit scared, when there's a lot of fear, when there's a lot of ego, because the ego is really involved in all of this. So when we don't want to feel like we're ridiculous, or we really want to show a different image than what we are, and that's really when those triggers are actually coming in, and we can already see, okay, that's not good.
Well, it's interesting, I think, as you describe that, those triggers, it almost sounds like the raw emotional type of reaction, right? It is that before you really have a chance to process and think about it, it just sort
It's
of
out.
happens. And that's the trigger. So Victoria said, I can relate to that. Julia's joining us. Julia was our guest on the show last week. Hey, Julia, great to see you. She has water in her cup. And then Victoria said, that's why I use a different language. So my kids won't understand the words, but sends the message. That is hilarious, Victoria. So let me just say, I was looking into this, and one person, a couple of people, different ways that they describe triggers, but they say that it is something that really evokes that intense emotional reaction from you. And the key is sometimes that reaction is out of proportion to the event or to what just happened. Right. And that's an important element. So, Roz, let's come to you, and then we're going to go to Wanda and talk about what does being triggered mean to you?
Trigger means to me is when it's everything that Mariah said, plus it pulls me out of character a little bit. Remember the alter ego I told y'all about last year?
What's the name again?
Jenkins Johnson. It pulls me into a whole nother person, honey. Yes, a whole nother person. And so when that person comes up, just like Mariah, everybody knows, go to your separate rooms, go to your four corners. Or if Roz says, well, I want to revisit some dialogue, that means I've had time to think about it, analyze it, and I'm coming back for you. So, it's just a couple of things. Sometimes people's names is a trigger. I can hear a name and I just, food is a trigger for me. If I smell some good food, that's a trigger. I'm just going to be honest, go and get my pork chops and things. So I have a couple of triggers. So, just like you said, a situation, sometimes what come out and the alter ego comes out. Sometimes it's food, sometimes it's a name. Somebody can say a name and I'm like, I shut down. So I've gotten a little better. A little. That much.
Un poquito.
Yeah, that word right there. See, y'all speaking that language. See? So, you know, it's you know, for me, I'm gonna be honest. I can go from 0 to 100 in like, you know, like that. You know, depending on what the situation, depending on what the trigger is. But then, I come back and try to revisit, get a little trigger therapy, and try to come back and hopefully fix it. If I can't, everybody be all right as soon as the swelling goes down. I'm done. Let's turn over to Dr. Wanda. Go ahead, Dr. Wanda.
Wait, Roz, before you turn it over to what is your alter ego's name again?
Jaquita Alize Jenkins Johnson. That's my alter ego.
All right. We should never forget that name. I don't know how I forget it. Thank you kindly, man. Wanda, what
You're so welcome.
what does triggering mean to you?
I know why you forget the name, because it's faux names. Oh
my goodness.
Oh my goodness. She made it clear with that one, boy. Because each one of those can have a character within itself. So I'm sorry, that wasn't your question, was it? Okay. I'm sure that Roz has that effect on people, though, right? She kind of
she absolutely does. Oh my gosh.
Yes.
So tell us about being triggered, Wanda.
You guys covered a lot of it, and I love that quote, Rhonda. I love that quote that you put up. That was so good. And I like the fact that you already said it's something that causes us to act out of character, and Roz brought it up that triggers can be many different things. You can have visual triggers. Really you can get triggered from the senses. You can have some, like she said, she smells something in her food. So there are many different types of triggers that we can look, even seeing something. But when I think about, a definition of a trigger is an event that precipitates another event. That's the most basic one. And so there's some type of stimuli. And when you add that word emotional on there, that means that something happened. You were stimulated and it caused a strong emotion, right? And when I think about a strong emotion, I think about like the frequency, the intensity, and the duration of that emotion that means that you're triggered, because you can have an emotional response to anything and it's not necessarily an emotional trigger, but it's when that emotion is so, deep, it's so intense and it's attached to a thought, a memory, a trauma, something that causes that emotion to just accelerate, and which typically happens, as you all have already said, you act out of character, you go straight to action, and there's nothing in between to kind of help you mitigate that response. But that emotional, when emotion is attached with the trigger, unfortunately, a lot of times it's trauma. And then there's just a more basic, you were just hurt by someone,
right.
Somebody hurt your feelings, or, not to mess with them again. But a lot of times it's trauma. And so there's a lot of work that needs to happen in between, making sure you don't get to acting out of character, with that strong emotion.
No, I think that's the important part, is the out of character, right? And how often are we being pulled out of character, and what's causing us to do that? I heard another analogy when I was looking up triggers and really diving into this a little bit more, and they used the analogy of a gun, right? And they said, okay, so a gun has many different parts to it, and which is in fact where the term trigger comes from, right? They said that a gun has a barrel, it has a firing pin, it has ammunition, it's got the trigger pull mechanism, it's got all of those things. So when we are triggered, what is the actual happening? And think about this in context of yourself when that trigger is happening. When that trigger is happening, someone pulls the trigger, right? Let's go back to the gun. Someone pulls the trigger. What happens when someone pulls the trigger on a gun? There is an event an explosive event that causes then the ammunition to be fired, right? So if you look at that in context of yourself, someone says something crazy to you, someone says something that you are not really feeling, you don't think it's appropriate or whatever, and all of a sudden, so they pulled the trigger. Now, everything else after they pull the trigger is on you. Everything else, that explosive episode, what happens to you internally, whatever that outward explosion, all of that is on you. So here's what we do. We focus on the person who pulled the trigger. They shouldn't have pulled that trigger. Look, they don't know me by now. They don't know Jaquita Alizé Jenkins, right? They don't know what's going to happen when they pull that trigger. They should know. So they shouldn't have pulled that trigger. Instead of looking and saying, well, why do you have the ammunition to begin with? You're packing the punch. You're carrying the ammunition, right? And so what do you think about an analogy?
So you trying to say that I gave them permission to pull the trigger? Is that what you're saying?
That's kind of what I'm saying. Wait, is Jaquita gonna come out if I say yes? Because
no. This is Roz Jones talking right now. This is Roz Jones talking. I'm just asking a question. Yes. For Jaquita.
Okay, asking for a friend. I'm asking for a friend. The answer is yes, because you allowed them to pull that trigger, right? And then the ammunition and the explosive event that happens after is also yours to own. So let's be real clear. This doesn't mean that they should have said what they said, right? We're not saying that, because people say and do all kinds of things that we know are wrong or inappropriate or whatever. So yes, and, right? It's not a but, it's a yes and. Yes, they said something inappropriate, and you still have to own it. You have to own your part in your reaction. So what do y'all think about the analogy of the gun? Wanda, you unmuted. What did you think about that?
I think that's perfect. I love that. And you went straight in. We are responsible for our reaction from that event and giving them that ammunition. Because you said from the beginning, it's a place that we haven't healed, a place that we need to be aware of. So that is so good with just the whole process of the gun, pulling the trigger, you giving them that power to do that, and then the event, how you fire off, right? All of that is just really good, and a good, as teachers say, a good object lesson to kind of make you think through the process. I think that is so true.
Awesome. Thank you. And Mireille, what are your thoughts? Before we go to you, we've got a couple of comments. First of all, let me back up a second. Victoria said, this is too funny. That's when we were doing all that crazy laughing in the beginning, right? We were just cracking up. I think we've got our breath now, Victoria. I'm not promising it's not coming back, because it just might. So Regina's out there. Regina says, greeting ladies. Happy to be here. Hello, sister. Great to see you. And in your opinion, any of the five senses triggers the most? This is a question. So in our opinion, does any of the five senses trigger the most? So let's back up to this is a great question, Victoria. Let's back up to what a trigger is. A trigger is resulting from some external form of stimuli. What is an external stimuli? That could be anything. It could be, as you said, Roz, it could be something that you smell or sense. It could be visually. You mentioned this, Wanda, something you see, right? It could be something that you hear, could be a trigger. How many times? All right, let's go back to old school. Y'all remember y'all favorite old slow music, favorite slow song that used to come on the radio where you was in the dark in the corner and it was just you against the world, right? That could be a trigger. That song could come on today, and what's going to happen? You're going to be like, okay, everybody stop talking, right? Everybody stop talking.
You're having a flashback.
Absolutely. So it's important to know that anything that brings stimuli into your existence, into you, could be a trigger. So really, really great question. And Victoria says, in her opinion, smell is the strongest. I think it just depends, Victoria, because people are all different. Smells to me are probably not my strongest triggers, but we're all different. Some of us are auditory or visual or etc. So really great question. Thank you for that. Michael says, put a cork in it. I don't know what point you said that in a conversation, Michael, because we have lost it. And then he said, good morning, ladies. Michael's actually going to be joining us on the show on November 6th. Yay, Michael. We've been trying to get you on for a little bit. So we are looking forward to having you on and having a discussion as well. So,
but you know what though, Rhonda? I want to say this. When I was growing up, this is just, as I always say, Roz Jones talking. You know, when people used to talk about your mama, that would trigger you to want to fight. You're not gonna talk about my mom. I'm finna, put a can of whoop tail on you. So, that was the hearing, and so it triggered something. So, when she's asking about the senses, like you said, I think it's individual. It just depends on the person. I guess which sense at that time when it happens is the strongest sense. And, I know for me, audible, because I have to listen a lot, in a lot of situations. So I think my audible is stronger sometimes than my visual because I'm getting old and I can't see too well. So I know that the audible is the thing for me. But, again, if we go back to what you said, we give permission sometimes for this to happen. And so sometimes we need to serve an eviction notice or, draw the line somewhere to where, as we start to see, hear, taste, smell, or whatever, we may need, I know now I take a pause. I have to take a pause. I have to take a pause for the cause as one of my protection mechanisms around these things that trigger me. And I just wanted to say that. Thank you.
I love that. So I'm going to, as we think about these triggers and we're thinking about our own personal experiences around being triggered, I think one of my areas that I can get triggered pretty easily, and I'm not easily triggered. I have managed that over time. I might emotionally react to something and I might ponder something and go, what the, right? What was that? But I'm not easily triggered. But one of the things I notice that can trigger me is when people decide that their emergency is my problem. Right? When you decide that you've got all of this stuff going on and all of a sudden it needs to be a priority for me, I'm kind of feeling some kind of way about that because I'm thinking, no, I am with full heart sympathy and empathy and compassion and all of that other stuff thrown out there. But no, right? You have to deal. I recently had this situation happen. I got a message from a family member who said, oh my gosh, I'm having a really hard time right now. I'm going through all this stuff. And I was like, oh my gosh, I'm so sorry to hear that and all this. But all of a sudden there was all these requests, right? Can you do this right now? Can you do this? Can you do this? I'm like, yeah, no, I feel terrible about everything that you're going through. Love you dearly. Want to listen. Hey, can I listen to help support you? Because I'm like super busy right now. And this is not a good time for me to be just dropping everything that I'm doing to do that. I may have times when I choose to do that, but that's my choice. Right. And it is not, and I will not be guilted into someone else deciding that I need to make them a priority because they have their stuff happening. Right. So those are just my triggers. So Regina says definitely audio are triggers for her. Okay. And sometimes all of those sounds really do bring back memories. And then Cindy said sudden extreme news of a well-known or well-hated celebrity could bring on a trigger one way or the other. Yeah. So news in the media, think about our political world right now. Think about what's happening with COVID. How many people do you think out there are triggered regarding COVID? Listen, you can
can't even count.
You can't, Mireille. If you just go onto Clubhouse, you'll find almost every room that has the COVID topic in it has 5 to 1,000 people.
Right.
Right? You can just see.
And it's
they're
crazy.
talking about,
But
yeah, they're talking about
Yeah.
Alec Baldwin. They're talking about, COVID, anything that's
vaccine.
happening, it's in Clubhouse.
Right.
That's
Booster
yeah.
shots, who should get them,
Yeah.
everything.
Exactly. So it's but one area where people are triggered as well when you're tired, and then you basically triggered by all kind of things. I still remember, with my kids, I'll be tired from work, and I come and they just say something to me, and I'm like, disproportionately react, and it's not about them, it's about me being tired or bringing another situation at home, and that can be one of the triggers, just being tired and not actually resting. Then you trigger all kind of things, reaction when dealing with when interacting with people.
You know what I think is really important about that point, Mireille? So I'm going to go back again to our current state and COVID. And I do a lot of work with leaders, right? And the focus is on leaders. So what's happening, leaders are triggered in the workplace. They are tired. They're overwhelmed. They don't have enough staff. Everything is changing. Policies and processes are changing every day, right? They can't keep up. And what's happening is they are triggered. So when they would normally take time to respond to an employee or a situation in a much more empathic way, all of a sudden that's not there. They are lacking compassion right now because they are tired and they have not been able to refill their own buckets. And Wanda, I'm wondering, are you seeing that same thing?
I am. And just the sheer uniqueness of this time. People have never been whatever they are, a leader, a manager, a supervisor, whatever your title is, in a pandemic. We heard this word 1,000 times, unprecedented times. And so we're all navigating our roles in a time and having an experience that we've never experienced before. And the emotional toll, the mental toll, all of that is happening to all of us. And so when I work with people who are running things, the leaders, the ones who are visible, they're, like you said, they're trying to figure out how to manage themselves and then be responsible for everyone else. And I think that we forget that human side. And that doesn't even add in, we talk about the pandemic, there's also the whole social justice thing going on. And so depending on if you're a leader of color, a Black leader, then you also are managing that emotional part of what's going on in life. And if you are thinking about the people who you lead who are impacted by that, if your empathy is in place, like Rhonda said, that's a lot to handle.
It really is. And so I was cracking up because I was reading the chat, and so there's a couple of things. So Victoria said, could being triggered be associated with being vulnerable? So Victoria, this is a really good point. Let's talk about some of the internal stuff that causes our triggered. We've talked about maybe getting enough rest and being exhausted, those sort of environmental or physical aspects, but there are also some other things. So I'm going to cover that in just a second. And Julie, you are cracking me up. I am now triggered by wearing jeans or dress pants after COVID. I am much happier in yoga pants, my new normal. I know, right? Now when you leave the house and you're like, what? I actually got to dress up? Really? Please. I don't want to get out of these yoga pants. So that is something. So Victoria, that is a great question. So let's look at some of the causes of triggers. And before we do that, I probably just need to do a quick reset really quickly. Quick commercial break here because we are already more than halfway through the segment, which again, we were just talking about this, Wanda, how we never have enough time for these heavy, deep topics. So quick commercial break. If you're just tuning in, you are watching the Coffee with Rhonda show, and we are discussing emotional triggers. If you have not taken a moment to like or share the video, please do that. Don't forget to keep your comments coming. And let's do a quick coffee break where we get to revisit our coffee humor. So quick coffee break for us really quickly. Another coffee is calling you. What do? Do you hit the snooze button and say, remind me every 5 minutes? Or do you send a message that says, go send a message to my brain, go do it now, right now? You have the choice when another coffee is calling you. And that is our coffee humor for today. Don't forget to pick up your shirt or your swag or your cup or whatever that is. You can visit Coffee with Rhonda store, and I think the link is out there in the thread for you to be able to see them. And these coffee breaks in the future will be sponsored by different companies, different folks with messages to share with you. So just wanted to do a quick coffee break now. Let's go back to Victoria. And Victoria, is such a great question. So take a look at this, ladies, and let me know. These are some causes of triggers, right? Common causes of triggers: rejection, betrayal, unjust treatment, someone challenging your beliefs, when you feel feelings of being helpless or loss of control, being excluded or ignored, right? So we go back to the whole environment of inclusion and belonging. When someone is voicing disapproval or criticism, feeling unwanted or needed, feeling smothered, insecurity, loss of independence. And Victoria, that insecurity is one that goes to that vulnerability place also a little bit as well, right? So these are some common triggers. And if you're out there, if there's one of these that resonates with you, let us know what that is when you often find where you might be finding yourself feeling triggered. So Roz, Mireille, do any one of these stand out for you?
Can you?
Yes,
Can you
we
hear
can
me?
hear you.
I think rejection and betrayal, because a lot of times when we are, particularly in business, sometimes, we go to a client, we offer services, we're rejected, or, we're rejected in other places. So, sometimes rejection, and then also to trust, betrayal. When someone breaks your trust, it's hard sometimes to come back. And, I tell people, a lot of times I say, I go through rejection therapy like everybody else. And so, we were taught that, rejection is failure.
Mm-hmm.
And so, that's huge. So rejection is not always failure. Rejection is good a lot of times for growth. And we weren't, I wasn't taught that, and we've talked about this in previous segment, that, rejection for a lot of people is a sign of failure, a sign that, you didn't do something right. There's cause and effect for rejection. And it's all the time. It's not like that. It's not like that. So we got to take the stigmatism off of some of these things, and then so that when we react, we can react in a different way that, provides productivity instead of destruction. So I just wanted to put that out there.
No, great point. Mireille, what stands out for you? Those are good, Roz.
I mean, those are good, but for me, it's really about control. So I get triggered when I lose control. I like to, and it goes with the independence, because I like to be independent. I like to, do what I want to do. So when I'm, put in a box, or when I'm forced to do something, then I start to be triggered. I'm not happy. I'm anxious. I'm starting to be very irritated. And so it's important for me to just have this, to know where I'm going, to know what I do, and without having people behind me saying, oh no, you shouldn't do it this way, you shouldn't, behave that way, you shouldn't take this position, you shouldn't. If you tell me, I'll not only I will respond back, but I will also just do the opposite. So it's going to trigger a reaction that is completely the opposite of what you're trying to. Obviously, I listen to feedback, but when it's done in a way where they impose on you, it's not going to happen. So that's really the trigger for me, having this control and being able to be independent in my choices and in what I want to do.
I love that. No, and knowing yourself is important. And that brings up the point of what Michael is out there saying. So Michael said, we need to learn to lead ourselves first and soften our response to external stimuli. Wear lounge pants and socks because no one sees them online, right? We need to chill out a little more these days, but that is easy to say and hard to do. So I do want to know, and Victoria said, man, we need to talk more about this. Rejection is a whole nother I think, Victoria, you may have just given us another show topic, right? Is rejection and how we manage through that. Betrayal triggers me from unexperienced management in any case, and I'm working on this. It is those deeper experiences. It's within us. When we are triggered, I feel like we get into that victim place, right? You should not have done this to me. It's either, so I feel like it's either victim, judgment, or, you know, one of those emotions happening, right? Because judgment of others places you on a higher pedestal, right? I'm better, I'm right, you're wrong, you should, you shouldn't, right? That's a place of judgment. And so when you're in that place, you feel like you have the authority and the right to go off on someone because I'm right. So yeah, you said this and you shouldn't have said it. And so now you deserve whatever comes next. I think that's really important for us to understand about ourselves, right? And so, Wanda, you have a process. Everybody, I'm going to share a process that Wanda shared. And then, Wanda, I want you to introduce us to this process and talk us through it a little bit. So Wanda says, you know, one of the ways that we can begin to manage our triggers is by using the STOP method. And I'll put it on the screen. The STOP method is situation, thoughts, obstacle, and process. So Wanda, tell us what the STOP method is and how we can use it.
Thank you. I just have to say this. A lot of the processes and the methods that I come up with, I use them on myself first. So it's like this testing, and then I introduce it to my clients. I'm not going to say I use it on my clients. I introduce it to my clients. But it's a combination of some of the things that we've already been talking about it. And Roz said this a couple of times. She said pause and wait. So the situation, that's recognizing that stimuli. Where was I? What was I doing? Who was I with? All of those things around when you got triggered. So you have to identify the situation, identify the actors, the players, all of the things, the audio, the auditory, the visual, all of the stimuli that are coming to you in that situation. So you really take a moment to say, okay, where was I? What was I doing? Who was talking to me? And when you take the time to think through, of course, this is not going to happen when you're in the middle of your trigger, but once you start working through the process, it can be a part of that moment, right? So it's stop, S-T-O-P, because it means stop when you feel triggered, right? And when you're in that moment, this is not going to be an instantaneous fix it, but in that moment, when you go back and reflect, it can happen quicker every time. So identify the situation. And then thoughts, identify the thoughts. What thoughts are surfacing from that situation? Because I teach this, emotions don't have a thought. When that emotion happens, you attach it to a thought, a memory, a situation. You attach it to something that happened. The emotion comes up and in milliseconds or even smaller than that, our mind attaches it to something, right? And so what is that thought that came up when you were in that situation? What did it remind you of? Did it take you back to a trauma? Did it take you back to a negative situation? What was it? What thought went off in your mind? Because that thought is what sent that emotion on a spiral. That thought is what escalated, right? It brought you back to that place, that space. And this could be positive and negative, because I love what Rhonda said about the song. It takes you to a happy place, right? It takes you to a chill place where you're like, oh, yes. So it really could go either way. But when we think about what we want to stop, and I love, I think it was Michael just said about lead ourselves first. we have, as leaders, we have to go through this process in our mind. And the brain is so powerful. Our mind has the capacity to move through these steps just like that once we start working on it, right? So we identify the situation, all of the stimuli. We identify that thought that is making us escalate, because what we typically do is we sit in it. We start to feel that emotion. We feel that situation, all that happened, how it hurt us, how they hurt us. So, all of these things start popping off and we're like ready to go. You're not doing that to me anymore. We're giving them the power, right, Rhonda? We're giving them the power. And then the over obstacle, what that says is, what is the perceived obstacle or barrier that you are sensing because of the situation and the thought? Because typically there's some type of obstacle. Well, if I allow this, because this happened, because they did that before, because I went through this, I can't, or I won't, or so there's some perceived barrier or obstacle, whatever that is for you. Because remember, triggers are unique to us. They're based on our life experiences. And so that perceived obstacle is what's really kind of making you stay there. So you're sitting there simmering in your feeling, in your emotion, and you're either, whatever your response is, mouth going, stare, removal, whatever you do when you trigger, whatever. And then the P is the process. And the P says, don't negate the process. Okay, because it goes right back to what Rhonda brought in the first place. There's something there, you're triggered because there's some healing that needs to happen. There's some deliverance that needs to happen, right? And so go through your process. And I'm so guilty of this. And this is why I know this P is so important. Don't deny the emotion. Don't go numb, and don't run from it. Because I am the master of numbing out. I'm just not going to deal with this. So I go numb. So I'm not going to give you any response. I'm not going to even deal with my own pain, hurt, trauma. I'm just going to go numb and I'm going to move on. And that is so detrimental. Don't deny yourself that it's happening, because it's happening and you need to deal with it. You need to deal with it a long time ago, probably. And don't run from the process of healing. Allow yourself to go through the process. Identify the situation, identify the thoughts. Why is there a perceived obstacle? Because it might not be, but because of the thoughts. And then embrace the process.
Wanda, that's good. And so I love the aspect, and I'll ask Mireille and Roz to comment on the stop process in a second. And if you're out there watching and you have a question about the stop process, please type that in the chat so that we can bring that into the conversation and ask Wanda to respond. One of the steps in the stop process that I love is the thoughts. I am constantly sharing with my clients and people when I'm coaching them to go back to your thoughts. Because when you are feeling violated, when you are feeling triggered, when you are feeling whatever, it stems back to your thoughts. You said this beautifully, Wanda. Emotions don't have thoughts. Emotions are and feelings are powered by thoughts, right? So go back to your thoughts. Whatever you're thinking, I guarantee you your thoughts will reflect that. So if I am really upset because a colleague really, really made me angry, I can guarantee you I am thinking they knew what they were doing. They did it on purpose. They do this all the time. They are trying to sabotage me. I guarantee you those are the thoughts, right? When someone cuts you off on the road, the same thing. When you are triggered by that, why are you triggered by that? Because they should have saw me. They knew better where they get their driver's license, all of these things, right? So if you go back to your thinking, you can, and then that awareness allows you to make the shift. So I love that you have thoughts in there, Wanda. I am all about the thoughts. I'm like, you know what? Just bring it back, because if you can identify the thoughts, you can change the thoughts, right? And then you are in a much more powerful position. So Mireille and Roz, what's your any comments or responses to the stop process?
Oh, I love it, because it gives us back the power. And we always had this power, but because of the trigger, we forget that this power is ours. and we are, the one in control. We can choose to react, as we want. We don't have to be driven by, external factors. And that's really what I like with this process, is that, you go inside and you go back to your thoughts and you manage the whole process, instead of you being dragged and managed by your thoughts, or managed by what people are saying, or managed by, the external circumstances. And one thing that Wanda said, and I think I'm now thinking about myself, is, identifying the trauma that actually, trigger all of this, because the reaction is one thing, but what is behind all of this? And I was just saying before that, I like to be independent. I don't like people dictating to me, but it's just because I've been raised like that by my dad. So now I'm refusing, basically to say, no, I don't want to be controlled. I want to have my my freedom and do whatever I want to do, and I really like that.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, Mireille. No, that's great. And that trauma piece, wow, taking the time to go back in our trauma. And Roz, I'm going to come to you next. And as I was looking at this, a gentleman said a quote that sort of caused me to step back a little bit. And he said, gosh, I should have wrote his name down, but I was so busy running around. I think he said that being triggered and allowing others to trigger you is almost the ultimate form of slavery. I know, right? You see the reaction to that? That's exactly what I did when I heard it today.
Yes, ma'am. Find that for me.
Right. I sat back and I went, wait a minute. Because what he said is, when you allow, you have given your power away and you allow others to have control over you and to determine how you feel and how you respond, then you are in that ultimate form of slavery. And I was just sort of blown away by that a little bit, because I thought, oh my goodness. And that is basically true. At what point, if you're out there in the audience watching, please type in the chat, at what point did you intentionally decide to give away your power? At what point did you decide that others are more have more ownership of deciding where you are, how you feel than you do? When did that happen? So, Roz?
You know what? For the first time in all these shows, I think I'm speechless after that quote. I mean, I don't know, Rhonda, because as you said, give away the power, then we're operating in the dark.
Yeah.
I can't say nothing else. I'm serious.
It's a program, right? It's a program that's running below the surface. So I have a computer sitting in front of me, right? For all y'all that don't know, I'm a Mac user. So, I don't know why I just got all caught up in the Kool-Aid, but whatever. So I'm a Mac user, and underneath, so I'm pressing the keys and things are happening, but that's not really what's happening. What's really happening is under the surface, in the motherboard, in the operating system, in the programming. That's how it knows how to respond. So when we are triggered, there's something in us, that programming is running, right? And that's what's happening. And that's why a process like Wanda's is so important, because otherwise the program just continues to run. The program is just running. And until we intentionally start to bring to that awareness, which is the S in her process, right? Come to bring it to your awareness, then you can begin the process of reprogramming yourself so that you take back ownership and control. So I think this is just a really great conversation. I'm going to go to a couple of audience comments, and then I want to share one last thing with them. I think a lot of times we cannot separate or find rational thoughts from our feelings. Our mind is too cloudy. It takes a lot of training of emotional intelligence. Victoria, that's true. We know. So there's a quote in the emotional intelligence world that says, strong emotions make us stupid. Strong emotions make us stupid. That's a literal sense, because we know what strong emotions do. That the fact that when the amygdala grabs control, it blocks. your logical processes from kicking in, and now you're stuck in that emotion. So that is actually true, your statement there. And then Michael said, your issues today are not just for a few of us and your listeners. This is a topic for all people all over the world these days. All of our fuses have become shorter and we are quicker to shoot back. Learning to be flexible and dodge bullets and refrain from firing back quickly is the key to success today. I have two other amazing mentors, the two psychologists that were on the show a while back, Casey and Tim. And they talk about you cannot go further with anyone than you have gone with yourself. Sit with that for a moment. Right. So awesome breakdown. Wanda, mom said she loved your stop process. And then Victoria said, me too, speechless. I think in my case, it happened when I gave control of another person over me. So as we move to go into our wrap up segment, I'm going to do something just a little bit different because there are some other things that we can be thinking about as we think about managing these triggers. I'll put them up on the screen and then we'll mold our folding comments around those as we get ready to wrap up. This has been a powerful conversation, ladies. And so before I go to that, I just want to say, because we're getting responses, Regina said, I used to give away my power because I did not know that I was in control. Now I choose to keep my power and teach others by example as I continue to learn. And mom said, great reminder, Mireille, we are the ones with the power. We need to remember this in all situations. If you are giving somebody access to the trigger of that gun, don't be surprised when they fire it. And then you still have to own the fact that you supplied them basically with the ammunition. That's yours to own. So let's do our picture shot. And then we're going to go into our What's in Our Cup segment and get ready to wrap up. Got it. Awesome. I just love that so much. That has just become just a highlight of my day, that little coffee shot. So we're going to move. If you're out there listening in the audience, I'm going to put something up on the screen when we come back from this little intro segment here. But I want you to think about what's up on the screen and think about everything that you've heard today. And please begin to type into the chat. What are you taking away? What did we help put in your cup today that is going to help you on your journey to wherever it is that you're headed? Because that's our purpose for being here. And that's the purpose of the show. So we'll see you on the other side of this. All right. So we're going to go to wrap up. So here's the other thing, some other things to be thinking about in terms of managing your triggers. You now have a whole process in the stop process that you can use. Here are some other things. Recognizing it in the moment. And this is what's included in the stop process as well, right? Being aware, really, if you do nothing else, just for the next 60 days, pay attention. Just pay attention. What's coming up for you? What's coming up in you? What are you responding to? Own it, right? Evaluate feeling versus fact. Every feeling is not fact. Just because you feel it doesn't make it fact, doesn't make it true. And your feelings will lie to you. So evaluating what is it something that you're feeling versus what is truly a fact. Is this their problem or yours? If you get triggered, is it really their problem or is it your problem? That's something that you have to begin to really think about in the moment. Other tips and techniques in the moment, if you are triggered, because we are human, and none of this means that you will never be triggered again. Please don't take that away, because you may leave this show, walk out of your front door and get triggered. But some things you can do in a moment, deep breathing, right? To bring yourself back, take a moment, as Roz said, pressing that pause button, taking a moment to always remember to be present. If you are present in the moment, then you can't be in the past because you're in the moment. If you are present in the moment, you can't be worried about because they did this could happen tomorrow, because that's the future. You're in the moment, right? So some other things to just think about in terms of helping yourself manage through any of those triggers. So I'm going to ask Roz and Mireille to share with us any thoughts they have on anything on this list or anything we've discussed in the show that they are taking away. And then, Wanda, we're going to ask for your final thoughts and comments as well. And then we also want you to share how others can connect and can connect with you. Regina's out there. She said, "Great show, ladies." Yeah, this was a really, really good one. So, Mireille, let's start with you. What's in your cup and what are you taking away?
So in my cup today is, I understand that triggers, we own our triggers. So nobody owns it for us. We own it, and it's personal, but at the same time, it's not a life sentence. So we can improve. There are processes, and I like the stop processes, to get back our power, because it's really about, when we get triggered, it's really about giving our power away. So we need to get it back, and it's our responsibility to be aware, to understand, are those triggers are manifested, into our life, and try to go back, like we said, think about, go through the thought process, and also all the trauma, the different, trauma that we went through, and try to understand why we are behaving like that, and get back to owning the triggers, owning the process, and being back in control.
Right. I love that. Own the process, and get back in control. So, Roz, what's in your cup? What are you taking away today?
I'm gonna take away that if something happens, I need 6 feet. I need 6 feet between me and the other person.
So I'm going to rename that. That is trigger
It's called
distancing.
It's social distancing.
It's not. It's trigger distancing.
That's what oh, okay. I thought it was social distancing.
Roz,
I think we were just talking to Alizé. I think we were just talking to Joseph, not Roz. Yeah.
Roz has come up with a new term. We have come up with a new term for Roz, y'all, trigger distancing. All right. We come up with some interesting terms on this show. So thank you, Miss Roz. If you're out there, don't forget to type in the comments. What are you taking away from this discussion and this conversation that's going to change your day, your life, your tomorrow going forward? And Ms. Wanda, tell us what you want to leave us with today from this conversation. And then if anybody wants to learn more or connect with you, how they can do that.
I just want to say thank you so much for this show. When I watched your show before, I pulled the laughter and the fun, but the wisdom. I mean, this is like the perfect combination of wisdom and fun. So I love you, ladies. This is great. Thank you so much, Rhonda, for having me.
Oh, you are so welcome.
I think you all have said it. I mean, I just want to leave you that the stop method is all about you owning it. I do deep work. My clients don't come to me if they're not ready to go in deep and do what needs to be done. So you can maximize the moments of your life. So if you are ready to take back control and not let anybody else pull your trigger, this method and others are what I love to work with people on. But what my biggest desire is for us to heal and be whole in the spaces and the places that we are in. And when you're ready to do this deep work, you're going to be more authentic, more powerful in the places that you go. So take the time to heal, so you can enjoy your emotions. Emotions are God-given. This is not something that is just haphazard. It's something, we're meant to feel and feel deeply. We just got to do it when we can own it, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah. So if you want to reach me, I'm big. I have courses around all this information. I have an online school called Empowerment School. It's at agreateryou.thinkific.com, agreateryou.thinkific.com. So please check out the courses that I have. I have courses on being triggered, emotional intelligence, embracing the emotional me. You can find me at wandalscott.com, www.wandalscott.com. You can contact me there for coaching. And I have a business called We Consulting Solutions. So that's www.weconsultingsolutions.com. I'm everywhere at Wanda Empowers on social media. So thank you so much for this opportunity. Great show. I loved it.
Awesome. Thank you so much. You know, what I love is, so last week when we had Julie on the show, the quote that stayed with us for, some time, I think, was becoming the author of your day, right? You are the author of your day. And this week, Wanda, I think you just gave us our quote of the show. And that was, and I don't even know if you know that you did it, but I was writing it down. It's maximize the moments of your life. Love that. Maximize the moments of your life. That is so powerful, right? And you cannot do that if you are allowing yourself to be emotionally enslaved, right? And held hot. I know it's hot. I'm saying it intentionally so that we can get people's attention. Do not allow yourself to be emotionally enslaved by others. That is a choice you are making. And if you are in that place, that means you can change it, right? Because any choice that you have made today, you can decide that you want to change that and make a different choice tomorrow. So Victoria is out there, and Victoria said, it reinforced the concept that I am in control of the gun and the bullet supplying it and not in control of the person holding it. Awesome conversation. Loved every minute of it. Thank you so much, Victoria, for tuning in. So glad you joined us. Michael said, I'm taking away several smiles. Thank you all. And I can't wait. Michael's a hoot, so I cannot wait to get him on the show also. And then Cindy said, love that, Roz. And I have thoroughly enjoyed this conversation. So we are here for all of you, really to help give you tools, tips, resources, contribute to your world and your day, your ability to lead not only others, but to lead yourself in a way that allows you to lead above the grind. So we are excited that you have joined us for this episode. Thank you so much. We will be back next week for another episode, same time, same station. I cannot believe we are halfway through the season already, ladies. So it is moving very, very quickly. So we will see you back here next week. For my panel and everyone here, stay tuned for just a moment. For everyone else out there, we will see you next week when we come back and give you more tools to help you lead above the grind. Until next week.